Pick this up. Oh, and he hits him with a good shot, and he hurt him. Hit him with the right hand, and he's dead up with the right.
Imagine facing a man nearly a foot taller and over 100 pounds heavier than you, a true giant. That was David Haye's challenge against NIKOLAI VALUEV for the WBA heavyweight title. They called it David versus Goliath, speed versus size, skill versus raw power. Haye, a former cruiserweight champion, had to find a way to beat the biggest heavyweight champion in history. It seemed impossible, but as history shows, sometimes David really does slay Goliath. Let's see how it all went down. Be sure to watch this video to the end and don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. David Haye wasn't just any boxer, he was the best. In his prime, he dominated opponents with power and speed, tearing through the competition before finally facing his own Goliath. But before we get to that epic showdown, let's take a look at some of the Haymaker's greatest fights. Back in 2007, David Haye took on Jean-Marc Mormec in a fight that really put him on the map. Mormec was a tough guy. He held the WBA, WBC, and the Ring Cruiserweight titles, so this was a huge challenge for Haye. Things didn't start great for him. In the fourth round, Mormec knocked him down, and for a moment, it looked like Haye might not make it. But he wasn't done. He dug deep, got back into the fight, and in the seventh round, he landed a brutal combination. Right uppercut, left hook, right hook that sent Mormec to the canvas. That was it. The referee called it, and Haye won by TKO. This win wasn't just another victory. It made Haye a world champion. He became Britain's first cruiserweight to hold two major belts at the same time, proving he was the real deal. At the time, this was expected to be his last fight at cruiserweight because bigger challenges and bigger paydays were waiting for him at heavyweight. At number 2, we have one of the most anticipated matches of 2008. David Haye and Enzo Maccarinelli faced off in a huge all-British cruiserweight title fight on March 9th during that year at the O2 Arena in London. This wasn't just any fight. Haye had the WBA, WBC, and the Ring belts, while Maccarinelli held the WBO title. It was a massive deal, hyped as the biggest British boxing showdown since Chris Eubank versus Nigel Benn. Both guys were known for their knockout power, so nobody expected this to go the distance, and they were right. It was over in the second round. Haye didn't waste any time. He caught Maccarinelli with a big shot, and that was that. Fight over. After the win, Haye had some sharp words for Maccarinelli's promoter, Frank Warren. He basically said, "Thanks for sending Maccarinelli our way, but we'd feel bad taking any more easy money." It was a dominant performance and another statement from Haye, proving he was ready for even bigger challenges. Before facing David Haye, NIKOLAI VALUEV was a giant in every sense of the word. At 7 feet tall and over 300 pounds, he was the tallest and heaviest heavyweight champion in boxing history. Someone even said that the Russians had cloned a prehistoric man just to fight Haye. While that might be a stretch, one thing was certain: VALUEV looked unlike any other fighter. Haye didn't hold back either, famously calling him the ugliest man he had ever seen. But he wasn't the only dangerous one in the ring that day. VALUEV also had a winning streak. He won the WBA heavyweight title in 2005 by beating John Ruiz in a close decision, making history with his sheer size and strength. Before losing to Ruslan Chagayev in 2007, his first career defeat. Determined to get back on top, NIKOLAI VALUEV changed trainers and worked his way back, beating former champion Sergey Liakovic in a dominant performance. In 2008, he got another shot at the WBA title when Chagayev pulled out of their rematch due to injury. VALUEV faced Ruiz again and won a controversial decision to reclaim the belt, but his most famous title defense came against 46-year-old Evander Holyfield. VALUEV had almost a 100-pound weight advantage, yet the fight was slow and uneventful. Many thought Holyfield did enough to win, but the judges gave it to VALUEV, and the WBA even had to review the decision because of how controversial it was. By the time he faced Haye in 2009, VALUEV was an experienced champion with a tough, awkward style. He wasn't the most exciting fighter, but his size made him a nightmare to deal with, and very few figured out how to beat him. Before their fight, a lot had already happened with David and Goliath behind the scenes. Valuev had been busy racking up wins, but aside from all that action, Haye had moved up from cruiserweight after dominating that division. He knocked out Monty Barrett in his heavyweight debut and was originally supposed to fight Vitaly Klitschko. That didn't happen, so he agreed to face Vladimir Klitschko instead, but then he pulled out with a back injury. In the end, Vladimir fought Shagayev instead and won. With the Klitschko fights falling through, Haye turned his attention to Valuev. In July 2009, they agreed to fight in November. There was some drama though. John Ruiz argued that he should be next in line for the title since he was the highest ranked contender after Shagayev. But in the end, he stepped aside and agreed to fight the winner of Haye versus Valuev. So now, Haye had a shot at the WBA heavyweight title, but he was up against a literal giant in Valuev. It was going to be one of the biggest size mismatches in boxing history. They called the match David versus Goliath. And for good reason. If you were watching Haye fight for the first time, you might end up thinking that he's short. Just to be clear, Haymaker is over 6 feet tall. Many believe that his only hope would be a miracle, the kind that delivered his namesake from the hands of Goliath in the Bible. But how did that fight go down? Haye was smart enough to know that he couldn't stand toe-to-toe with the Russian giant. Instead, he used speed and movement, constantly circling and refusing to be an easy target. From the opening bell, it was clear that he had a game plan, one that mirrored what Ruslan Shagayev and Evander Holyfield had done against Valuev before. But this time, Haye was landing more often and with greater accuracy. For the first 3 rounds, Valuev found himself chasing shadows, throwing out his long jab, but rarely connecting. Haye was too fast, slipping and moving, making the 7-foot, 320-pound champion look sluggish by comparison. But Valuev wasn't just going to let the title slip away. From the 4th round onward, he began pressing the attack, stepping forward with more purpose. His jab, which had missed frequently early on, now started landing. Haye, for all his movement, was forced to work harder. And by the middle rounds, his accuracy had dipped. It wasn't the dominant shift in momentum, but it was enough to make the fight feel closer. Still, Haye remained disciplined. Whenever Valuev closed the distance, Haye fired back with sharp counters. And in the later rounds, those counters became more frequent and more effective. He may have been circling, but he wasn't running. He was waiting for the right moments to strike. His right hand, however, was not at full strength. Haye later revealed that he had injured it in the 2nd or 3rd round, meaning he had to rely mostly on his left. Yet despite this setback, he still found a way to turn the tide. As the 12th and final round began, Valuev knew he had to go for broke. He came forward aggressively, jabbing and looking to land something big, but Haye stayed elusive. Then, with less than a minute to go, Haye unleashed a powerful combination, one that finally rocked the giant. For the first time in his career, Valuev looked unsteady on his feet. He didn't go down, but he was visibly hurt, wobbling as Haye followed up with more hard shots. It was a close fight, difficult to score, but when the final bell rang, the decision was in Haye's favor. He had won by majority decision, becoming the WBA heavyweight champion and pulling off the biggest victory of his career. Some critics called it uneventful. There were no knockdowns, and Haye spent much of the fight avoiding exchanges, but that didn't matter. He had done what he needed to do. He slayed his Goliath. And that's how Haye pulled off one of the most impressive wins of his career, proving that skill, speed, and strategy could overcome pure size. What do you think? Was Haye's performance a masterclass or just a dull fight? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.